Right, good afternoon and welcome to the last of our four-part series in these webinars, which have been aimed really at two things, I guess. One is just to, maximize your job prospects and accelerate your career growth. And that's a whole, section that we dealt with in the first part of this series of four webinars where we're really aiming to position you for the workplace and then make sure that you've got the absolute best opportunity of landing the job that you want and boosting your career growth off in your workplace of choice as far as possible. So we did those two webinars a couple of weeks ago, and the recordings of those sessions are all right here on the YouTube channel. So please do take a moment just to subscribe, go pick up those recordings, and I'm sure you'll agree with Calvin. We were very pleased with the results and the sort of participation and the feedback from those two webinars, which happened a couple of weeks ago. And then this week, we've been focused on digital. Now, digital really, there's no doubt it's affected all our lives. And what we dealt with on Monday was digital disruption. So this is the disruption that happens as a result of digitized business processes and the way that digital has changed the marketplace and turned industries upside down. And now the second half of that really is to say, well, what is the digital transformation that companies are going through? And of course, in our own lives, we've been through a degree of digital transformation. Universities have been through a degree of digital transformation. And a lot of this has been accelerated, obviously, in the last year or so by the lockdowns of COVID-19 here in South Africa and around the world. So what we'll go through today, I'll put it up on the screen just now, will really be a bit of an inside track. My day job is actually to help plan and run the digital transformation for the First Rand Group. We're one of the biggest financial services companies in Africa. We obviously have FNB, RMB, Westbank, a couple of the well-known brands. And as we drive digital transformation, it's really fascinating for me to observe and see firsthand inside a large organization what that means for us. So I'll be giving you some unique insights to digital transformation in general. We did touch on some aspects relating to banking and financial services on Monday. Again, you can go and pick up that video and go through that as well. And I'll ask Calvin just to introduce himself, but as he does that, as always, give us some love. It's a long weekend, guys. I hope you've all got something planned. I'm taking the day off work tomorrow, so I'll be off for a good few days. I'm going to do a digital detox as we talk about digital today. Also good that you are anti-digital at some point in your life just to get the balance back with the physical part of our lives. I'll be walking and fishing and hiking and cycling over the weekend, which I'm really looking forward to. So we've got Melissa, we've got Wayne, Scrivener, fantastic guys. Say how's it. Please pop a question onto the chat that you've got about digital or anything that we've covered in the webinars today. Will really just be a bit of a roundup, and happy to take any questions and support you with any questions that you've got. Esther High all the way through from Namibia. Absolutely fantastic to have you. So Calvin, over to you. You've really been the brains of the operation, I guess, pulling these webinars together and kind of I just show up and tell a good story. So from your perspective, hopefully these have been valuable, and just give us your initial thoughts around digital transformation as we go into the session today.
Absolutely, Peter. For starters, I also think I need a bit of a digital detox. So I think I might follow you this weekend. But yeah, thanks for pitching up, guys. I really appreciate it. I know this is not necessarily the most convenient time. Some people might have lectures. So thank you for being here. Quickly, my name is Calvin. I'm heading up the professional development and industry exposure portfolio at eBook House at Tux, and I'm doing industrial engineering in my final year. But yeah, Peter, I think we've had a great turnout. And again, thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to come and share your knowledge and your invaluable advice. But really, I actually remember doing an interesting activity not too long ago, and we had to do a Porter's 5 Forces model. Okay, so for those of you who haven't done one of those yet, it's basically a competitive analysis of a specific industry, and you're looking at 5 things, right? So you're looking at your supplier power, your buyer power, the threat of new entrants, substitute products, and then direct competitors within the industry. And, in an era where the rapid emergence of new technologies and then coupling that with innovative business models has actually turned the the threat of new entrants upside down. Entrants can just really do as they please with all these rapid technologies, and big players are questioning their power in their sectors. So I think that's what I understand of this currently, but I'm hoping to gain a little bit more out of it from you, Peter, and then touch on some awesome topics like self-disruption. Should we, as graduates going into the workforce, kind of encourage self-disruption within companies? Do we have a place for that? Should we be encouraging that, when we enter the workforce? And then also some other themes such as customer experience, CX as they call it in the industry, arguably the most disrupted area in the last 10 years when it comes to technological disruption. And then investing in talent, I think that's a big one for companies these days. And we'd like to get to know from you what the talent deficiencies are and what skills employers are looking for, but can't necessarily find. So those are some of the things that I've been thinking about. I'm hoping that you guys, the students, also share those sentiments. But yeah, let's get this show on the road.
Brilliant. Thank you, Calvin. I think that's touched on a couple of great themes that will certainly weave into the conversation this afternoon. And I think just to link back to those first couple of webinars, we did mention at that point that, certainly having some insights and knowledge about what's going on in industry from a digital disruption and transformation perspective is really only going to be to your advantage. Obviously, you might need to specialize a little bit depending on the industry that you're actually going into and the role that you're going to be performing as an engineer or as any other type of graduate student. But to be able to say that you can talk about some of the topics that we're going through in these two webinars, possibly in an interview, or even once you're in the workplace and in those team environments, will absolutely only put you in good stead. And I think, Calvin, just to answer your question right off the bat, when we look at people coming in and we are interviewing people, and as hopefully the job market sort of starts to open up again as the economy recovers from 2020, I think we definitely can be looking for people who have their ear tuned in to those trends and those impacts that we have to grapple with and understand how we change our business. And as you mentioned, certainly from the inside out, that self-disruption is so important. It's really going to be driven by our own people, by our own teams. There's only so much that top leadership can do. They're there in terms of governance and inspiration and setting the vision, but we rely so heavily on the ingenuity and the innovation of our employees. So we're absolutely looking for innovative, creative thinking people, and that's certainly something that we'll cover in a lot of detail this afternoon. So guys, as I've explained, previously, a lot of what we're going through is covered in a lot more detail in my digital masterclass, which I'll be providing free access to this afternoon. I'll pop a link onto the chat in about 20-25 minutes. And really the course is broken up into two major sections. The first one is digital disruption. And Calvin mentioned there, this idea of the winners and losers, as I call it, and how these established companies have been turned upside down by smaller, newer entrants that have come in and leveraged digital to their advantage. That really is what's covered in the first section of the course under digital disruption and what we spoke about on Monday. And the second half of the course that you're looking at now and the topics that we'll go through in the webinar this afternoon, it touches a lot of what Calvin is sort of introduced in terms of how you need to rewire the modern firm so that it survives. Because look, I mean, FNB has been around 180 years. So we can trace our roots all the way back to a branch in Grahamstown in 1838. And, we certainly hope to be around for another 180 years. And I certainly believe that people will always need banking, will always need financial services, but they may not always need banks. They may not always need banks in their current format. And certainly the large, highly structured, highly departmentalized, bureaucratic sort of construct, if you like, of the modern day firm, I certainly believe, is undergoing a massive amount of transformation. And there are certainly going to be some that emerge out of that and survive and thrive and do exceptionally well. But we're going to go into a little bit more detail around that as well. And that's also related to the disrupting yourself or dying a digital death. And we looked at a couple of examples on Monday. We think of Kodak. We think of Microsoft and Carter. We think of the Sony Walkman. We think of Blockbuster, biggest physical network of DVD rental stores in America, completely upended by video streaming. And not just the technology itself, but a startup that takes advantage of that technology in new and innovative ways. And even though those big incumbents have the technology, not willing again to disrupt themselves or cannibalize existing product lines to take advantage of it. We'll talk a bit about Agile. I actually just finished my PhD last year. I studied Agile software engineering in about 25 different large organizations around the world. Hashtag graduate from home. Wasn't able to walk across the stage at Wits Grade All. I spent 4 years visualizing myself walking across the stage in front of my family and putting on that PhD gown. But it never happened. I had a very special little ceremony at home. But the core of my research was to understand Agile software engineering teams and how teams come together. What are the human factors specifically of Agile teams? And we'll go into a little bit of detail about that as well. Customer experience, Calvin, you touched on that. Absolutely, this idea of the digital native, the younger people coming through now, becoming our customers, just do not have the tolerance or the patience or the loyalty necessarily to put up with forms and queues and paperwork and having to go into a branch or go into a physical network. If they can click a button and it reliably gives them exactly what they want, they'll reward whoever it is. They don't have that much brand association that our parents and our grandparents potentially had, which we've relied on, to survive for 180 years. We've really got to think about digital transformation from the outside in, from our customer's perspective. What is that customer experience that we need to be designing? And it can be very uncomfortable. When we bring customers in for focus groups, they tell us our stuff is rubbish and it doesn't work and we need to change things. And it's a function of how well we're able to listen to that and change what we do. So I've been very involved in running what we call the F&B Code Fest. We ran it for about 5 or 6 years. It was the largest banking hackathon in South Africa, and it went on actually to be featured in a case study at Harvard Business School. And I talk about that in the course in a lot more detail. But I became passionate about creating, just almost that corporate garage, if you like, for FirstRand, where we had to get people out of the workplace and into a much more of an innovative, safe space without managers, without meetings, without all the other sort of policies and procedures that go along with trying to operate in a large organization, and say, look, if you had to rebuild this, organization again, from a customer's perspective, using the most advanced technology and leveraging digital as far as possible, what would that look like? And we spent 5 years, building and innovating, fantastic prototypes. So I've been personally involved in our journey to do that. And top talent comes through as part of that. When you create a culture of innovation, which I think F&B has had to some degree, certainly from a customer experience or a channel innovation perspective, as Calvin and I were just chatting about just now, getting employees in that are brave enough and willing to innovate and to change the status quo, people that come in and just keep the wheels turning and sort of just want to do a 9 to 5 and carry on and get on with it. Look, we're looking for those disruptive, creative, bright people. Steve Jobs called them the crazy ones. They're crazy because they think they can change the world. They are actually often the ones that do. And then we'll wrap up just towards the end of the hour with just what's happening in the future. And I give a little bit of a crystal ball, certainly what I see happening in the banking space. We've seen the emergence of what we're calling super apps. These are ecosystems. We spoke about platforms and ecosystems a little bit on Monday, and I go into a little bit more detail in the course. But banking ecosystems generally have very good, trusted, reliable architectures behind them. And to add in additional features and products and services within that ecosystem and to make it available through that banking app, certainly something that we've been looking at doing already. And if you look at banks overseas, something that they're investing a lot of money in, a Nedbank down the road, have already done quite a lot in terms of e-commerce and retail offerings that they're bringing into their app. And different banks have different types of approaches to that. So we'll certainly touch on that as we go through the session this afternoon. So welcome to those of you that have just joined us. I think we've got a really good turnout today. So lots of University of Pretoria guys coming through. We've got a couple of people in Namibia. I think, which is absolutely fantastic. Windhoek, Namibia. So warm welcome to you. Lovely to be out there. And I do believe a friend of mine was telling me that, if you drive through Namibia today, you just see, fields and fields of grass and flowers, where previously there was deserts. And apparently, as I understand it, that's because of, the excessive rainfall that we've had. So apparently that's just something that's absolutely beautiful. If you can get up to Namibia to go and have a look, very, very beautiful part of the world, right here in the southern parts of Africa. All right, so warm welcome there to Tristan Fisher from the University of Pretoria. And guys, please pop some chats into some questions into the chat. Let us know what you are specifically interested in with regards to digital transformation this afternoon. Hi, Unarine Eleanor from University of Pretoria. Absolutely fantastic to have you with us today. All right, so let's get into then this topic of digital transformation, and really what are companies trying to do? They're trying to change their business to become more digital and more customer centric, and those two things often go hand in hand because the customers bring the expectation of increased digitization, and a customer will typically be related to a range of firms and apps and ecosystems in their lives. And those expectations are transferred onto any other relationship that they have in their life. So typically, you'll say, well, I could do this on that app. Why can't I do it on that app? Or, it was easy for me in that shop, but why is it so difficult for me in that shop? And customers are very good because they drive that expectations across all of their relationships. And if we don't meet those customer expectations, then they just simply exit. So we want customers to bring that high level expectations. We want employees to bring that high level of expectations. But digital transformation is about what is the journey that a company puts in place? What is the objective and the vision that a company then sets out to try and achieve, along which it will digitally transform the way that it works? And in society, in a broader context, we all have a mixed experience, I suppose, of the government services that we get access to, and where we see improvements and where we see better service levels and where we see faster turnaround times, you can usually associate it with some investment in technology. So, Home Affairs has had a big drive around digitization over the last number of years. And my own individual perspective is that I certainly, as a customer or a citizen, have experienced an improvement in the turnaround time of Home Affairs to provide me if I need passports or IDs or birth certificates, etc. I can see that there's a digitization of those processes. And unfortunately, and this is something that we have to think quite carefully about, very often where there is a breakdown or a delay in the process, it's often because there's still a manual step. There's still a bottleneck, despite the digitization on the back end. You still potentially have somebody that doesn't have all the training helping you in the physical environment that you have to actually go to pick up your ID document or to get whatever physical product it is that you are receiving. So this talking, about talent and the customer facing, employees of organizations have to ensure that they don't then let the company down in terms of the investments that have been made in digitization, that face-to-face customer service in the last mile, as we call it, then is the disappointing aspect and sort of taints the rest of the digitization. Obviously, in services, in banking, the vast majority of it is a digital product. There is nothing physical. Even plastic, we're getting rid of. FNB's launched virtual cards, one of the first in the country. We actually prototyped that at one of our code fests a number of years ago. And, you'll get your credit card number for 10 minutes to enter in on a website. And that's a very powerful, device for combating corruption. If you've had credit card fraud, you'll know it's a very unpleasant thing to happen. And so plastic has a degree of vulnerability built into it. But when it's a digitally generated credit card number using our virtual credit card product, that's something that gives you greater security, greater convenience, and gets rid of the plastic. Gets rid of having to carry something else. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't actually carry a wallet anymore. I just carry my phone and I put my driver's license and my credit card in the back of my phone. So cash, plastic, all these things, that are physical form factors, even in the banking environment. Checks. We've publicly said we are not going to be accepting or issuing checks by the end of the year. I think even in Namibia, guys that are here from Namibia, I think you guys have even led the way to shut down checks. We know it's another physical form factor associated with banking and financial services. And I've mentioned a few other industries there. You can look across any of them. And depending on whichever industry you guys end up in, and engineers can work in any industry that they choose. Engineers are in absolutely, high demand because of their systems-based thinking and approach to solving problems in organizations. Engineers absolutely have the advantage and can apply that type of thinking in any of those industries. I'm a mechanical engineer from WITS, and I've went straight into IT, through the consulting route. And, if you've got that logical systems thinking approach, then when you come to digitally transforming an organization, it's exactly the same. And you're thinking about what are your strategic capabilities? What is the customer experience that you want those capabilities to make available? What is the workload that you're going to be putting on your platform, and the ecosystem that you want all your users to participate in? And they may come into that ecosystem, as an employee, as a customer, as a partner of the bank, or in other different contexts. So great that we've got a few people. I see we've got Wits University. Hi, Joyce. I saw Joyce join the Facebook group the other day. So just a reminder, if you'd like to join the Facebook group in the Student Success Coach, Joyce, maybe you can just give an idea of whether it's been a good experience for you so far. I think you were looking for a mentor, and there's a mentorship feature inside the Facebook group where we pair people that come into the group with mentors that we already have in the group, who have signed up to say, yes, I'll be a mentor. And as a student, going through your studies, it's very useful to have a mentor just to keep you going, keep you focused, keep you, going week to week, to make sure that you get through your studies. So very warm welcome to you, Joyce. And any of you would like to join the Facebook group, I'll pop the link onto the channel now. So that, I guess, is just a little bit of a perspective from the point of view of industry. And last point on the slide there, automated trucking in America. So I mentioned it on Monday, but the book called the War on Normal People actually does quite a detailed case study on the trucking industry of America. And we've all heard about driverless cars, but the reality is that there's still a lot of complexity in the suburban routes for the driverless vehicle algorithms to have to negotiate and to optimize. And the most viable use case for widespread adoption of driverless vehicles is actually in the trucking industry in America. And what happened was, in the late 60s and 70s, America built out the interstate highway system with these, the Death Valley Road, Route 66, the Depeche Mode song. These are very long, straight, well-built roads that sort of crisscross America. And those are perfect for driverless trucks. And what happens is the driverless trucks carrying the goods across, the United States of America, there'll be a fleet of them. There might be one human driving the first, and then 5, 6, 7 trucks behind those going on these long interstate highways. And when they get to the suburban areas and they need to get the factories or the warehouses, they'll actually stop, and then humans will get in, and then they'll drive the last few kilometers and navigate the more complex suburban routes. And the challenge that Americans have got is that the trucking industry is one of the most iconic industries, one of the biggest employers, not only of drivers, but all of the side industries around the coffee shops and the roadhouses and the hotels that have sprung up along all these trucking routes. And so that's a real challenge that America is going to have to get to grips with. And you'll see these use cases of digitization, and really, driverless vehicles is digitization of the work that a human does in a vehicle. You've converted the human brain of steering the car into an algorithm on the computer, which then just does the mechanical controlling of the gears and the steering wheel. Nothing much, obviously very different with a Tesla, but you can convert a big rig, a big truck, any kind of car into a driverless vehicle with that conversion kit. And that's actually what's been rolled out. So you don't have to have a brand new expensive driverless truck. You can convert an existing big rig into a driverless transport vehicle. And in addition to the impact on jobs, there'll actually be a huge positive effect on road deaths. 80% of all truck collisions are caused by driver error. And of course, as one can imagine, driving long hours through the night, incredibly dangerous. Drivers get sleepy. Drivers need to take a break. Drivers don't know when to stop and rest so that they're not a hazard on the road. But of course, a computer doesn't need to take a break. It doesn't often even need to see in bad weather conditions. And so you've got this challenge of digitization, saving lives and doing a better job, but humans, being displaced by that digitization, and a whole sector of the economy now needing to think about how, as I've said there, that second last bullet, they then adapt to new roles and hopefully stay ahead of the digitization. And we spoke a lot about that disruption and the impact on jobs in the webinar on Monday. So maybe go and pick that up and have a look at any of those topics there. Okay, Esther, yes, we have the slides up. Everything is there. So apologies if you're not seeing anything. What I do is in the Facebook group, straight after these webinars, I actually post all the slides and I provide all the resources into the Facebook group. So let me just go and grab that link quickly, and then you can hop on there and join up into the Facebook group and then get all the fantastic value that I provide to you in there. And I think Joyce has put a big smile on the chat to say that, hopefully she's had a good experience coming into the Facebook group. And I'll talk a little bit later on in the webinar about some of the other value that you can get from being part of the Student Success Coach community. All right, so let's change gears a little bit, excuse the pun. But digital transformation, as I said, also relies on this idea of self-disruption. Otherwise, if you rely on existential threats to trigger you into action, then you're always going to be, responding to change as opposed to driving it from the inside. Here at First Rand, I constantly am eternally grateful for the visionary leadership that we have and the willingness to change the way we do things. You'll have seen in the press a couple of years ago, Jacques Celliers, he came out and was one of the first CEOs, in the banking industry to say he's given up his office, he's given up his perks, he's just literally on his laptop, he walks around, he grabs a hot desk. And I saw that in action. I used to work in a couple of doors down from him in the same open space area. And we ended up using his office as a meeting room. And he extended that innovative thinking to the whole of our campus in town. And he broke down all the office walls. He got rid of all the cupboards. He got rid of photocopiers. He got rid of fax machines. He got rid of lever arch files. He got rid of fax, all the physical form factors that cause the bottlenecks in these processes. Like I was saying to you earlier, you can digitize a part of a process, but if there's still a form somewhere in that process, that form or that badly trained person is going to be the bottleneck, and people will measure the whole process according to that weakest link. And Jacques, 2 years before COVID, said get rid of all physical form factors in our internal processes, because that's where the breakdowns happen and the frustrations with our customers. And lo and behold, COVID hit, lockdown, we're all working from home, end of March 2020. Now, do we have our photocopiers at home? Do we have our filing cabinets? Do we have our lever arch files? Do we have those boxes, that we always think we need with all that forms and documentation? Absolutely not. Did we need it? Maybe in some instances there were regulation that required that paperwork or those forms, etc. But by and large, our entire company transitioned onto a work from home environment almost seamlessly, and we transitioned our call center people out of physical offices. And of course, there was a surge of use, obviously, of our app and online banking environments. And so I've personally witnessed how that internal self-disruptive mindset, was ahead of the game, was ahead of the existential threat of COVID on the lockdowns. And Mark Zuckerberg there, inside Facebook, obviously the biggest media company in the world today, obviously doesn't create any of its own content. We spoke about marketplaces and ecosystems on Monday, but he's not resting on the laurels that he's achieved. He recognizes that there's going to be lots of competitors coming in, and he, implores his employees to change the way Facebook works from the inside out. FMB has had a very successful innovation program running over many years, started by Michael Jordan, and we would reward our employees for implementing successful ideas that brought value by doing things differently. And what we didn't want to do was to have an innovation department. And I think that's one of the worst things that you can do to try and drive digital transformation or innovation, is to departmentalize it. If you look at General Motors in the 70s and 80s, they set up an innovation department because they knew the motor industry was going to be disrupted at some point. And lo and behold, of course, we've seen that happen with Tesla. But what did General Motors do? They set up a separate division, and they said, right, it's called Saturn. They built a new office for them. They put their brightest people in that innovation department. They gave them the reporting line directly into the CEO of General Motors, and it failed. Okay, it failed because you have to transform and innovate through the whole organization, because an organization is like a living being. If it sees something that is a threat to it, it will starve that internal virus almost, because it's changing the way that it operates. And just like a living organism, will identify that and isolate it and get rid of it, so too an organization has got to go through a process of evolution, so that it can adopt and internalize and adapt to that change. But we also know the clock is ticking, because if we don't do it ourselves, then it's going to happen from the outside, as we saw in some of the case studies on Monday. I spoke about CodeFest just now, and I go into a little bit more detail about CodeFest in the course. And in actual fact, there's an entire course on the FMB CodeFest. And what I'll do is I'll just open that up and give you guys all access into that for free today. Hadn't planned to do that, but I will do that just now quickly and put that link on there. And those of you that are interested, I take you inside the FMB CodeFest. I take you inside the process that we used, to set up that large-scale banking hackathon, and I explain what we did and what we tried to achieve, such that it ended up becoming a Harvard business case study, and is taught in MBA courses around the world. We partnered with Gibbs, and they wrote a case study on it. We started with just a handful of developers sitting around a couple of desks overnight, and we ended up with 400 developers over a week-long period of innovation, including obviously a coding marathon, during which people did obviously work during the night to innovate with the latest technologies and build prototypes that solved significant business problems using the latest technology. And the last point there, and I'm going to ask Calvin just for some thoughts quickly, is that there's this idea of strategic ambidexterity, or the two-speed organization, and we're all grappling with this. We have architectures and systems and processes and ways of doing things that you can trace very far back in our history, and then we're trying to leverage the latest and greatest artificial intelligence. And leaders have to understand and bring together these two worlds. They have to run a large-scale workforce with a vast range of skills, because we know we still need to run the bank, and there's a lot that still depends on it, but we need to create something that we will then, migrate everything onto, take all those people with us, make sure there's an evolutionary path to that new digitally transformed business world that we're aiming for. Calvin, any thoughts from your perspective on this idea of self-disruption and sort of internal innovation?
I find that concept of strategic ambidexterity quite interesting. It reminds me of when I played cricket in high school, and you had some players that could bat right-handed but bowl left-handed, and those were quite valuable in the team just because of the diversity that they offered. And I remember you mentioned something really interesting in your book, Peter, and I'm hoping maybe you could touch on that. Is one of the barriers to this ambidexterity is actually managers, and they hinder that kind of innovative culture. I was wondering if you could comment on that. I found that very interesting.
Absolutely. And I think the management structure of the modern day organization, I think it was Steve Denning or even Porter or one of those great thinkers that said, the management structures of the modern day organization are really what we have to thank for building the modern world, because that structure was what was designed to execute and implement on these visions and these plans, and the MBAs of the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, that sort of Accenture, Harvard Business School type of thinking was what built the modern firm, and that relied on the management structure. And it worked for a while simply because they had a longer horizon to which they could predict and plan and put in management structures and teams within those management structures to create value for shareholders. However, as we explained on Monday, we're in the second half of this exponential curve where the change that is happening is so rapid and so quick and so destructive that managers themselves are feeling almost out of their depth and unable to catch up and unable to adapt and be as agile as they need to be. And it's largely not their fault. We, as large organizations, have trained managers to maintain the status quo, to have structure and discipline and policies and procedures in the way that we run teams, call centers, branch networks, physical footprints, production, factories, warehouses, you name it. That's been managers' responsibility. And now, with the rapid pace of change accelerated by COVID, you find middle management struggling to adapt and change. The top management get it. They understand the need for change. The bottom layers, the developers, the agile thinkers, the graduate engineers like yourselves, we read the literature. We've got no skin in the game. We don't have a career built out of climbing the management ladder where there's a personal vested interest. If I'm not a manager, what am I going to do? But if Agile brings a new way of self-organized thinking and for teams to be highly adaptable and independent of those management structures, management is going to resist that. And to your point, Calvin, are going to become the blocker potentially. And so the thrust of my PhD research was to help managers understand how they can create those environments within which those teams can be successful, a lot more independent of those managers, but in which managers could then adapt potentially into new roles into the future. So the point around leadership and their strategic ambidexterity, that's going to be something that plays out significantly over the next decade or so. But middle management, yes, absolutely. And the example of General Motors and Saturn, middle management rejected Saturn and they made sure that it was a failure. What we've tried to do is we've tried to have sort of federated or owner managed innovation. Our culture here at First Rand is one of owner manager, very entrepreneurial spirit, but now we need to invest digitally transformed ways of thinking into those owner managers. We still want the leaders of our business units and our products to be passionate owners of those businesses as if it's their own, but we don't want the unintended consequence of the management structure prohibiting the flow of information and the collaboration that you need across these departmental silos. And something that I talk about extensively in the CodeFest course is the Dilbertization, of the modern day firm and the cubicle mindset, where we've trained people to stay in their cubicle, just do their job. There's their job description. There's your salary. It's extrinsic motivation, and don't think outside of that cubicle. Don't think about trying to create value horizontally. Because you maintain the status quo and the power flows down the organization, the information flows up, and the value flows to the shareholders. Unfortunately, we're in a modern age now where all of those previous management theories are being thrown out of the window. So great point there that you mentioned, Calvin. Very good insights there. Okay, I am putting the link to the CodeFest course. So I'm going to say learn about hackathons in this course, free access here. So please do go and jump into that course. I'll see you there. Ask any questions that you want, introduce yourselves to the other students, and enjoy the journeying inside the FNB CodeFest through that course. Okay, then Agile. I think we have spoken quite a bit about Agile, so not going to spend too much time here. And certainly from a banking perspective, we've seen our attempts at adopting Agile has mixed results. Again, Agile by definition is something that is contrary to the modern day organization. Agile is about short iterative cycles of product development, whereas the modern day firm, as I said, is built on longer timelines of product life cycles. And unfortunately, those are catastrophic for industries today, because if you have an 18-month period in which you're trying to take a product to market, I can guarantee you that from the time you start that project till the time that you actually launch it, it's going to become completely irrelevant. So these short work cycles is the sort of primary principle behind Agile. And I've got lots of courses you can go and browse on Agile. I'm actually releasing a lot of courses this year from my PhD, really geared towards enabling leaders to understand how to manage and run Agile teams. And there still is a role for management. I certainly believe there is, but it's more about creating the environment within which people can adopt, as I mentioned there, the 12 key principles of Agile in the Agile Manifesto, one of which is the fifth principle, which I based my PhD on, is this idea of the supportive, trusting environment within which individuals can get on and do their job. And often the technical experts inside those Agile teams know a lot more about the work that they need to do than the managers. You think about the change. If you've spoken to your computer science colleagues on campus, the speed at which new programming languages are being adopted and made available, and through which innovation and digital transformation is being driven, managers just simply can't keep up. So they cannot hope to control at a detailed design level the products that they're implementing. What they can do is create the right environments within which those experts who know the technical details better than them can actually succeed. And that requires this shift, from management to servant leadership, to saying, how can I best serve my team? How can I use my organizational authority and my organizational power and put that power and that authority at the disposal of the team? How can I unblock the challenges that my team is having in order for them to deliver value? I want to jump on to customer experience because, this is such an important topic. And certainly in FirstRand, we've got large-scale efforts underway, really to embed proper customer experience best practices in everything that we do. We've done a lot of research on best practice, and we've, certainly aware of the shortcomings. We may be one group as FirstRand, but between Westbank and FNB and RMB, you could be customers of each of those, but you might feel like you're in completely different companies. Now, part of FirstRand's digital transformation journey is to say that we have a single digital enterprise platform that consists of multiple capabilities that we strategically invest in, but through which we make available, innovative and unique customer experiences as part of the main bank relationship that our customers may have. So a customer may trust us through the FNB brand or through the Westbank brand, but that customer experience layer gives them access into the FirstRand ecosystem and the capabilities that we make available to all users of the platform. What that does then is it should free up, these customer-facing teams to worry more about the customer experience and less about how they fulfill on that through the implementation and delivery of those capabilities, because now, instead of building those in the silos and the vertical constructs that run all the way through from the brand that the customer has the trust and the relationship, all the way through to the databases and the customer information, that customer experience really exists to the degree that the customer finds it useful. Beyond that and within that, it's a FirstRand platform that is there and available to the benefit of everybody else. RMB Private Bank, for example, if you in the future become an RMB Private Banking customer, that is completely fulfilled and delivered by another division in FNB. And it really is literally then, that association of the brand through the badge on the credit card. And for many, it's a mark of achievement and a measure of success. And that's how the RMB brand creates value, for our ecosystem of customers. But the reality is that in that customer experience only, and below that, the capabilities and the fulfillment on those RMB private banking services are actually done by common FirstRand capabilities for everybody. Now, what's very important there, that fourth bullet point, is that banking in general runs that same risk where over-the-top providers actually start to own that customer relationship, and then they see our services as being a utility on the back end. Now, different banks have different responses to this. Nedbank have positioned themselves as more of a utility provider, and can manage things like payments and other financial services and products. And if other companies and products want to white label those services, then they don't mind being a utility. FirstRand has been very clear that we want to own and manage, the entire ecosystem, but within which we then make available those value-adding products and services. The challenge that we have is to design a compelling customer experience that keeps people in the ecosystem and draws them in and gives them everything that they need, so that they don't need to, multi-bank or to go to aggregators to get the best of the banking industry. We should offer the best of the banking industry in that unique customer experience, even though there might be a Westbank logo or an FNB logo or an RMB logo on that. It's the best available in the industry within the brand that you trust the most. And as I said earlier, driven largely by change in sentiment to banks and a loss of trust in the meltdown of 2008 and the banking crisis that obviously resulted in a number of banks having to be propped up and many banks going out of business, was a real awakening. Was to say, at the end of the day, we exist for our customers. We exist to deliver value to our shareholders, and it is that experience that must drive everything that we do. And we must take that customer experience. And what we did in CodeFest, and I talk about this in the course, was we invited customers into CodeFest, and we said, tell us your worst experience of us, and then we're going to design a much better example of that, and we're going to work it all the way back inwards to see what we need to fix in order to deliver that on the front end. And you've got to have both. You can't just put a fancy front end or a fancy website on a broken internal process or a lethargic, bureaucratized internal operating model. It's got to be, best of breed customer experience supported by, well architected capabilities and processes all the way through to the very inner parts of the organization. All right, then talent, I think we've touched on quite extensively, and we look to our employees, and for us, CodeFest was really a showcase of our top employees who were willing to step up and to help drive innovation. And obviously, CodeFest is accelerated innovation through a sort of incentive competition type of environment, and it was fascinating to see, some employees, they really got it. They even took leave to come and attend CodeFest. They were our most engaged, and you can go and read the Harvard Business case study. We interviewed a lot of employees, and they really made it work for us. They really stepped up, and we just, again, created that environment. The management team of CodeFest, we stepped back and we said, guys, we're going to give you free coffee for the whole week, free Wi-Fi, everything else you need. If you want pink bean bags, if you want red bean bags, that's the environment that the organization and the management team can create. But within that, you've got to have the talent, you've got to have the willingness, you've got to have the individual. You can digitize as much as you want, but you still need the creative thinking, which machines have not yet been able to figure out. And we spoke again on Monday about how humans continually reinvent themselves. And so that's the space that you've got to be able to operate in. Understand what is your unique value proposition. How are you able to drive innovation and creativity in an organization? The rest of which is going to be digitized and automated and managed a lot more by machines and robots, and is going to displace and disrupt existing formal sector jobs and work opportunities. And that has been happening since the Luddites of the 1800s and the cotton mills, and where they protested against that. I think what's become more prevalent is that it was very much in the blue collar world and the automation of factories, but now the knowledge workers, the lawyers, the accountants, even the doctors, anybody that is relying on information to look at patterns and diagnose or understand or predict things, machines are going to be able to do more and more of that. And that's where you get these cycles of creative destruction. And so yourselves, as you're thinking about how to position your careers and on into the future and the industries and the companies that you want to go and work for, you really need to think about what is the degree of digital transformation in that industry, and how can you, with your skills and your passion and your aspiration, come in and with your knowledge of digital transformation, help drive that digital transformation, help be at the front of that wave of change. And, as I said earlier, I'm in that team that drives digital transformation across FirstRand, and we've got 40,000 employees. Now, we want all 40,000 employees to evolve with us on this journey and for us to be able to rebalance that workforce and retool and reskill that workforce so that absolutely every single person has a job and a future with us, because we're a family as First Rand and we want to look after absolutely everybody. But we recognize that digital transformation is going to happen at a talent level as well. And I give you a couple of examples in the course and in the CodeFest course about how Google and Facebook and others have approached this idea of talent, which is crucial. And as I said, I think engineering gives you the advantage. It gives you, so Jacques Saliers that I mentioned earlier, he's an engineer, and he's been very vocal in getting engineers in because we've got that systems way of thinking about things, and we understand how things work and how things need to be optimized to work better. So I think, all the engineers that we've got on the call today, leverage that thinking and supplement that thinking and that training that you've had as an engineer with, webinars like today, courses like what I provided you, and that will all just build and give you the advantage over, other job seekers and other colleagues that you'll encounter in the workplace. Last thought on the webinar this afternoon for today, as we wrap up this 4-part series of webinars with University of Pretoria, is this idea of moving beyond the core. So banking has traditionally been, concentrated around financial products and services. But if we have the ecosystem, if we have the platform, if we have the innovative thinking, and we have a large customer base that already benefit from those things, and as we saw in that exponential curve that I talked about on Monday, there's nothing that stops you from adding in more value-adding products and services into that ecosystem. And Tinkoff, as I mentioned there, launched a super app which combines the traditional banking services with lifestyle and leisure. Now there's a value to the organization for doing that, as well as a value and an advantage to the customer, because those lifestyle and leisure services are, really just going to be origination channels for banking products and services. The reality is that customers, if we truly think about our customer experience, our customers don't wake up on a Sunday morning and decide to phone us for a home loan. Our customers wake up thinking about buying a new house, and they think about their life goals, and they think about their health, and they think about their fitness, and they think about their stress levels. And if you can bring in some of those lifestyle ideas and concepts and marketplace activities into your banking ecosystem, then as part of that interaction that those customers will have with you and with each other, there's usually going to be a financial aspect to it. And, so we have this idea of utilitizing ourselves within our own ecosystem. So we're never going to differentiate on payments, because a payment is a payment. A money transfer is a money transfer. An exchange traded fund is an exchange traded fund. The days of differentiating on marginal differences between products is over. That's just created complex for us internally. We have to differentiate on understanding our customers' life stage decisions, lifestyles, needs, wants, desires, interactions, and socially minded activities. And then as part of that, as I said right at the beginning, bank and support and finance, those activities. And like we've seen with our NAV money and our NAV car and our NAV home services, on the FNB app today, you can go and scan your vehicle license, and every year we will have your vehicle license delivered to your door. Okay, and I've done mine. It works absolutely brilliantly, and that just takes a little bit of friction out of your life. Yes, there's a fee for it, but we will go and arrange it, and we will make sure it's at your door. We'll even prompt you and remind you that you need to get it, because we've got the data of your vehicle license. Now, what that does for us is it gives us a pipeline of information about your vehicles in your garage, which we can then feed into our Westbank business to then offer you financing. And it's actually going to be even more useful and more contextual. It's not going to be marketing spam, because we know that your Toyota Hilux Bakkie that you bought 4 years ago is now got a book value which is actually going to rapidly deteriorate, and we'll offer you a trade-in for a new model, etc. So that lifestyle thinking and that ecosystem-minded approach to banking, I think, is something that's going to happen quickly and exponentially over the next few years. Okay, guys, so as I said, this is all contained in the digital masterclass course, and we are still running a free promotion to access that, which I'm going to put onto the link now. And you can go through the course and you can pick up all the topics that I've mentioned in today's webinar and the one on Monday in a lot more detail. I'd really like to see you in the course. I'd really like to see you introduce yourself. This course is my best-selling course. It is now being done by people from I think over 160 countries around the world. You can see they're still very highly rated. It's also available in the Udemy for Business catalog. So if you go into an organization who has access to Udemy for Business catalog, Udemy actually curates its top courses. And I don't have all my courses in that catalog, but my digital masterclass is there. And it is one of my top performing courses for corporates that offer their employees access to this type of material. So please do pop in there. I'll see you there. And it'll be great just to watch your progress as you go through the lessons. And there you can see just a little bit of the social proof of some of the other students that have gone through it. And Calvin, I mean, you've read the book and you've been through the course. Maybe just to quickly give your perspectives on sort of what you learned and the value that going through the course or reading the book, would offer to people on the webinar today.
Yeah, both are great, guys. I highly recommend them. And it really doesn't take that long. I know you've got your studies to do and you've got priorities, but take a Saturday evening if you're not doing anything, or a Sunday afternoon to just flip through some pages in the book or watch a few slides in the course. It really and chip away at them. They really are useful, and actually, I found them really nuggets of knowledge in there. And I mean, I can speak to their value. The other day I was in the interview and the lady asked me what I think of the future of work and how digital disruption has influenced that. And I drew some of my answers from the concepts that Peter's taught in his course. So guys, really take the time, and Peter is being kind enough to give them to you for free, which is awesome. So thank you very much, Peter. We really appreciate it.
Only a pleasure, Calvin. Thanks very much. And the ebook is available for free if you're a Kindle Unlimited subscriber. And every now and again, I am given the opportunity by Amazon to put the list price down to zero on the open marketplace. So if you are a Kindle reader and you subscribe to Kindle Unlimited, you can grab it there for free. But I'll certainly let you know if you come into the Facebook group, when I am able to run a promotion on that ebook and offer it to you for free, then by all means I'll do that. But unfortunately, I've run out of my promotion days in my 90-day cycle with Amazon. They're a little bit strict, but there is the book just for you to have a look at it and go and check out on Amazon. And of course, you can see the preview. And if you want to pick it up for free when I run a promotion, pop into the Facebook group and you'll be the first to know about that. Then just very quickly, as we close out this 4-part series of these webinars, just to remind you that my brand, the Student Success Coach, I offer courses. I've got courses on writing. I've got courses on finishing your thesis. I launched in January a Student Success Masterclass, which really takes you through the 6 steps that you need to understand and plan for to be successful in your studies. That's been a very successful course, and I've had incredibly good feedback from that. Most of my courses in the academic space draw on my own journey, both as a part-time student and as a full-time engineering student at WITS back in 1996 or 7 or so. And I draw on not only the work that I did, but the lessons that I developed and the tips and tricks that I developed to get through my studies. And I think in many cases, the courses that I put together specifically aimed at students are the type of courses that I wish I'd had. So I sit down and I create a course and I think, right, well, what is the problem that the student is facing? What would I like to have had at that time that I was facing that challenge? I needed to write a research proposal. I needed to submit a thesis. I needed to do referencing. I needed to do improved academic writing. Or in the case of the Student Success Masterclass, I needed a blueprint so that I could plan my studies. I have self-development courses, time management, how to be successful in different vocations in the workplace, HR, technology, procurement, program management. I teach about agile leadership. I teach about how to get organized with Kanban. If you struggle with time management and organizing your tasks and planning out your work, I teach all of that. And in the course that I made available in the first 2 webinars, it was more geared on the workplace and applying those time management principles into that world there. Hi, Fard. Hope you're well. I saw you join the Facebook group today, so welcome into that community, and great to have you here on the channel today. I'd also just like to put a call to action to everybody there, as I indicate up on the slide. Obviously, have a lot of coaching here on the YouTube channel. This webinar and any others are always available as recordings or live sessions. Just about every single Friday, I go live on the YouTube channel. We have a Lunch and Learn webinar. I bring experts in. In 2 weeks' time, we're talking to a psychologist about student mental health issues. I interviewed a lady last week, actually also from University of Pretoria, about academic writing. A couple of weeks ago, I had the marketing director of Converse on the show, and I was interviewing him about Converse. You know, they make the sneakers. Can't say that I wear any myself, but perhaps Converse, very popular with you guys. They kindly made available 2 million Rand to students who were struggling to pay off their student debt. And we talked about the criteria for people to get access to that funding. It was a very, very much in demand webinar. And then often I will just coach or teach like I have this afternoon. So please do subscribe on the YouTube channel where you are right now. This recording will be available there. And of course, I regularly provide coaching tips and tricks on the YouTube channel for free. You can just go and get those and take advantage of all of that content that is available. And then the last thing just to mention to you as well is there's a podcast. So we're live now actually on Apple iTunes. A little bit harder to get into that that platform, but we've been on Spotify since January. We're also on Google, on Stitcher, on Breaker, and now excitingly also on iTunes. So whatever is your favorite podcast platform, please do go look us up there. And episodes go live every Wednesday morning. I talk to students, very much like yourselves, to understand what they've done to be successful, what their journey looks like, and you can pick up amazing inspirational tips and tricks to apply into your own lives as well. And I love podcasts because I get away from a screen. I can take my headphones with me. I go for a walk, go to the gym, go for a run. I'm driving along in the car, etc. So hopefully you'll choose me as your audio partner of choice to really inspire you with great stories of other successful students. And then the last thing just to mention as we close off this 4-part series of these webinars with the University of Pretoria is that there is a mailing list there that you can go and sign up and get regular promotional offers on that mailing list and take advantage of all the offers that are available through there. Okay, so I think that brings us to the end of this 4-part series of webinars. Calvin, I will leave it to you to say goodbye and close us out this afternoon. Calvin.
Great, thanks, Peter. Yeah, wow, I think it's been an amazing 4-part series. I personally enjoyed this digital week, if I can call it that. I'm hoping you guys actually got the amount of value that I did. I learn something new every time I meet Peter, and I'm just hoping that you guys took something valuable out of it, and that you can go and use and like Peter says, take action with. So this is all for you guys at the end of the day, and I hope you really enjoyed them. We've got a couple more interesting professional development themes coming up in the next couple of months. But the next one, guys, if I can quickly give you a prelude to it, is personal finance. How do we deal with our finances as students, particularly when we are students and then when we graduate? How do we take some steps towards obtaining financial freedom? So watch out for the emails with regards to that event next week, guys. I look forward to seeing you, and thank you again for joining. Peter, you're a fantastic human being. Thank you for all the work you do. We really appreciate it.
Great pleasure, Calvin. Thanks, everybody. It's been a pleasure to journey with you, and I certainly hope to see you in the Facebook group. Please subscribe on the YouTube channel, listen to the podcast, take advantage of all this great content. It's my commitment to your success.